So welcome to our very first episode of our Minecraft in Unity series. And in this series I would like to show you how to add all of Minecraft's characteristic mechanics to your Unity project. Those being a movable player character, a camera, an inventory system, obtainable and breakable blocks, world generation, crafting, enemies, and perhaps some more. But unlike other tutorials in this area, I would like to put the main focus on the actual Unity development and do the coding mainly for myself. And that's simply because I'm doing Unity tutorials, not C# tutorials. But of course, I will still show you all of my scripts at the end of each of my videos, and try to explain every single line to you. Additionally, I plan to put the scripts that I worked on in each video in its description for you. So today, what I'd like to start with is by creating who in Minecraft is called Steve. And that is our player character with the ability to look around in our 3D space, to move into 4 directions, and with the ability to jump. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. So in my empty Unity project, all I have is my scene, which is like the 3D environment that I'm currently in, a script called block texture, which will make my Minecraft blocks look as they should be. If you want to have some further information on this, please check out the video and those 2 scripts that will be important for this video. First of all, my entity script for each like player, animal, enemy and whatever, and my player script that inherits from it, which will control movement, rotation and jumping. Again, I will show you their content at the end of this video. Now to make things look a bit more exciting, I want to create a small like demo scene that will consist of a platform, which is of course not procedurally generated, that will just serve as a small testing area. So I'm going to create a new game object, call this one world, and now I'm already able to create my first block, which will be a cube. I want to shift a bit to the downside, add my texture script to it, and create a prefab out of it, which in Unity are like blueprints that you can later use to create like a whole world of them. Now let's create Minecraft's perhaps most characteristic block, that's the grass block, by dragging that onto a cube. Like that. I'm gonna drag this folder to my root folder. Now if you don't mind, I would like to create like a small platform out of these and make this one a new prefab, more precisely a variant of my like default block. In order to save on performance, I would like to tell Unity that it's able to connect the meshes of our blocks together, like that. Now as a Minecraft player, your eyes still probably already hurt by seeing this, but don't worry, we'll be adding dot blocks to our game later on, so that does already look pretty neat. Next, let's create our player, which our camera should be a child of, so it does move with it. And I wanna raise it to like height 2 compared to our actual player. Now I'm able to add my player script to it, which I will cover later in this video, to add a rigid body component as well, in order to make him fall down. But I want to freeze my rotation on every axis to make him fall down straight, like you're used to it in Minecraft. And finally, let's create a box collider, so that Unity knows where our player physically starts. And that should be 2 blocks tall, like that. I think I'm gonna move in a bit backwards, like that. Now if you downloaded the script, let's start by inserting our camera right here and tweaking the 2 sensitivity values a bit, like that. And let's see what happens. And as you can see, we're able to look around freely within our 3D environment. Again, I will show you the code behind it at the end of this video. Next, let's add movement to our player by setting the speed parameter to like 2. And that should already be working, so let's try this one out. But if you take a look, our camera seems to be a bit shaky when we move. So as you see, even with that you can have some trouble. And that's because our player's box collider does already intersect with our blocks colliders from below. So in order to fix it, we can simply switch from a box collider to a capsule collider, like that. And now that does already come a bit closer to what we wanted to have. Finally, let's add jumping to our player by increasing this variable a bit. And if you're familiar with the channel, you will know that usually I prefer to use raise in order to check if the player is grounded. But this time, I want to do it a bit differently. So what I'd like to do today is to create a small hitbox at the very end of our player, which is a trigger that by intersecting into the blocks sets our player's grounded state to true by leaving it again to false. So let's create a new game object for that. Add a box collider to it and make it as small as possible, like that, and make sure to make it an actual trigger. I'm wondering what our final result looks like. Now that seems to be working. And also, we can make any jumps in midair just as we want it. Now for our script. The entity script is supposed to be the parent script for all of our animals, players, and enemies in our game. And it gives them their basic values for their speed and their jump strength, which we want every entity in our game to have. And it tells them what a jump is, which is accessing the rigid body component, which handles the game object's physics, and then applying a impulse, which is specified through that parameter, because we don't want to have a continuous force, and apply that force to the upside with the strength that we can specify through the inspector. And for our player script, we want to build up upon our entity script, but add our camera movement to it, as well as our grounded flag. Now the start method gets called once, at the very start of the game, and it locks the cursor in the middle of the screen and makes it invisible, as you know from Minecraft. And then what we always want to repeat is to update our camera's rotation, the velocity of the player, and to check if he wants to jump. So in our check rotation function, we set our camera's rotation, which I mostly use the one from this video, which is getting our mouse position, getting the X and Y axis of our mouse, and adding it to our Y rotation variable, because we don't just want to have the change of it. The same goes for the X rotation, but we want to inverse it, and since we don't want the camera to make a looping, we want to limit the rotation between negative 90 degrees and positive 90 degrees, and then apply it to our camera as well as to our player. And what I needed to do is to unparent the camera from our player for a second in order to prevent some shaking, and then reparent it to our player. In our movement function, we got our input axes, which on keyboard will be just like A and D and W and S, multiplied by our speed, and keep the Y axis as it is, since we don't want our player to ascend into the air unlimitedly, and then converting it to the local direction of our player, so that in case he's turned around, W means to go forth from his perspective, but back from the global perspective. Now for our jump, as I explained earlier, as soon as our small hitbox enters the ground, we know that our player is grounded, and if not, he isn't. We want our player to only be able to jump if we're grounded, so if not, we cancel right here. And additionally, as soon as the player hits the jump button, like space, we want him to perform a jump, which I showed you in the entity script. And don't mind about this one, as this structs just to store some attributes of our camera. So feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments on what I should add next to our Minecraft game, and if you want to have some details on how our block textures work, please check out the video, and I'll see you next time.